The new Zelda game is finally here, and I've absolutely played it to death. So you know what that means. It is time to bust some myths in this game, spoiler free. For example, can you fly if you hold a crow? Will ice create paths when dumped on lava? And are animals at Hyrule Ranch scared of fireworks? Well, let's find out. And as always, leave your ideas below, because you might be featured in a future video. Now in this video we will be covering both simple and more complex stuff. I mean, the game just came out, so I don't want to go too in-depth right away. And so of course our first claim is a rather easy one to test, and we can try it at the very beginning of the game. Because I wondered, what happens if Link dies when he goes to confront Ganon and save Princess Zelda? Do we get a special cutscene of sorts like we saw back in the N64 days in titles like Banjo and Kazooie? Well, I gave it a shot. I booted up a new save file, watched the opening cutscene, and died to see what would happen. But sadly enough, Nintendo didn't create a special cutscene for this. Even when you die to Ganon, nothing happens. You just die and start over. That's it. So yeah, no little secret here. One of the first items you encounter in the game is a bed, and as you can imagine, you can create echoes of it, which is super useful because using beds to create bridges or get over obstacles is crazy effective. Even near the end of the game, you will still be using them. I mean, I did at least. But as soon as the game came out, I thought to myself, what happens if you try to sleep in it? Will it give you some sort of stat boost? Or can it heal you when you're missing hearts? I mean, in some games this works, so I had to try it. Which meant that I had to take damage. So I let a couple of moblins beat me up, and after that I jumped into a bed to see what would happen. And as you can see, it works. You slowly regain hearts, and later on you will even find better beds that heal more hearts. So if you're ever out of potions or smoothies, then just summon a bed and relax for a bit. It might take a while, but it does work. Now in the Zelda series, there's one enemy type that I hate the most. The Keese. Man, those are annoying, especially in Ocarina of Time. And of course, they are in Echoes of Wisdom as well. But here, we can actually use them ourselves. But as soon as I obtained this Echo, I wanted to try something risky. Can you turn these normal Keese into fire Keese? Because in older games, they turn into this variant by flying into fire. So maybe that works in this game as well. So I summoned a Keese and made it fly into an open flame, but then it all went wrong. The Keese was on fire, but also dying. Within a second it was gone. So yeah, this doesn't work, it just results in death. But luckily enough, you can obtain a real fire Keese later on in the game. It is fun to take out enemies in interesting ways. Sure, summoning a big, strong echo works, but you can also go for a different strategy. For example, you can use pieces of meat to distract enemies, and then when they aren't looking, you can deal with them. This was even seen in the trailer. But as soon as I obtained the firework echo, I thought to myself, can this thing also take out flying enemies if they come too close? Well, I decided to try this. So I went to the edge of the Gerudo Desert, where you can find a bunch of crows, and place down fireworks to see if they would fall for it. Now as you can see, this works incredibly well. They take damage from the blast and are even on fire afterwards. And the crazy thing is, they even fly right at the fireworks as soon as they hear the first blast, making this an amazing trap for dealing with any flying enemy. Now fire is pretty useful in this game, and quite quickly you will obtain an echo that allows you to set your foes ablaze. But if you don't watch out, you can also be set on fire yourself, which killed me many times because man, I don't pay attention. However, can you set stuff like bushes on fire if you run through them when you are on fire? Well, I decided to try it. Now I expected this to work, but to my surprise, nothing happens if you do this. Zelda is burning up, but everything she touches is completely fine. All of this was a bit strange to me, but hey, apparently Nintendo didn't keep this in mind. Sure, the fire enemies light basically everything on fire, but Zelda doesn't do this whatsoever. Now I will say I am thoroughly impressed by this game. At first I was a bit skeptical, especially because Tears of the Kingdom didn't exactly hit the spot for me. However, when it comes to this game, I have no real criticisms. The dungeons are great, the echoes are fun, and you can be very creative when solving problems. And I gotta say, it also reminded me a lot of the Oracle games when it comes to dungeon structure. Although I will say the game doesn't run that well on the Switch. But, as you could have expected, it also has some flaws. Apparently, if you stack a bunch of rope enemies on top of each other, one of them will start bugging out like crazy. So I went into a dark cave and started stacking ropes to see if anything would happen at all. And as you can see, something clearly went wrong. Now I'm not sure why this happens, but I bet it will be patched out in time, because it looks like a bug. In a lot of the older Zelda games, you often messed around with the elements to reach your end goal. For example, in the Great Bay Temple, you need the ice arrows to create platforms. If you don't do this, you can't really beat the temple. Well, unless you use special tricks. But can you also do something like this in Echoes of Wisdom? For example, by using an ice enemy to create platforms out of water. Well, who knows? Sure, you get an ice block echo later on, but can you also create your own? Well, I decided to find out. I summoned an ice Wiz robe and made him attack enemies that were underwater to see what would happen. Now clearly he wasn't able to create sheets or blocks of ice in the water that I could stand on, and the enemies below the waves were also fine. So this was rather ineffective, and even when I decided to use an ice Keese, I didn't get far. He only flew around a bit or drowned immediately. Clearly this doesn't work and you can't change water into ice. Throughout my playthrough, there were a number of enemies that I used again and again because they were just too good. One of those was a murder of crows. It's an amazing way to get rid of an enemy, and even during some of the boss fights, they were a great option. And another that I used all the time was the Peahat. He could clear the floor in seconds with his crazy spike attack. But then I wondered, can you also pick them up as they are about to do their attack and use it as a way to shield you from enemies? Because as soon as they come close, they will get hit by the spikes. I mean, if you do a similar thing with the Spear Moblin, he will continue to throw spears. So maybe the Peahat will also have its spikes out as you carry it around. So I gave it a shot. But as you can see, it immediately stops as soon as you pick it up, and doesn't perform its attack anymore, no matter what you do. So sadly enough, this is impossible. When I was messing around with water and ice, I noticed that the ice blocks float in water, just like they would in real life. So worst case scenario, you can also use these to create platforms. But at this point, I decided to test the limits. When you go to the ice area of the game, you will at some point encounter the classic freeze-earth enemy that is seen in almost every title. But if you drop this new enemy into the water, will it also float? Because normally when you throw an enemy in water, it will drown, unless it's a water enemy, of course. So I had to throw this icy boy in the water to see what would happen. And as you can see, it does float just like a block of ice and doesn't die either. But can it still attack enemies? Well, yes, if they come close enough. And you can even ride them if they chase a foe. So yeah, all of this works. When I was going through the whole game, I was talking about it a lot with Birdkeeper Toby as well as Zeltek, and during our little phone calls as well as back and forth texting, Toby told me about a small little detail in Gerudo Town that I hadn't noticed before. He claimed that the rug found in Gerudo Palace looks like an elephant, a bit like the one found in the Gerudo Temple. So I went there to take a look at it to see if he was right, and yeah, he totally is. Clearly, the Gerudo Queen loves her elephants, and to be honest, I would love to own this rug in real life. So please, Nintendo, release this one as merchandise. One of the most overpowered echoes in the entire game has to be the water block. It might seem simple, but man, it can be great to scale all kinds of obstacles. I mean, the bed is good, but swimming up a mountain is even better. However, when I was wandering the Gerudo Desert, I thought to myself, can you also place one of these blocks and make enemies walk into it and drown? Well, I decided to try it. Sadly enough though, most enemies were quite clever and wouldn't stay inside of the water block for long enough, but some were also stupid enough to stand still, and so they drowned. But filming all of this was pretty hard, so I decided to spawn some echoes and make them walk into it. Now as you can see, they drown in seconds, so clearly a water block can also be used as a weapon, but as soon as it takes damage, it's gone. So you gotta be careful. Like I said before, beds can heal you, and even when you go to the Goron area, you will quickly notice that the springs there will also restore hearts. And all of this made me think. Back in the older games, fairies always heal you and can even resurrect you. And in the game, there's actually a great fairy shrine with what looks like magical water. So can this restore hearts as well? I mean, I don't know. So I went outside, fought with some enemies, and ran back in to see if it would help me at all. But sadly enough, it did nothing. Clearly the Great Fairy won't help you with that. So you're better off spawning a bed or just drinking a smoothie instead of having a swim here. Usually when I make these myth-busting videos, I get all the ideas from people in the comments. But with this video, I had to come up with everything myself. And this next one was something I stumbled upon by accident. I noticed that the spark enemy is rather tough, and a lot of enemies I spawned in to deal with it couldn't even touch it due to the electricity. But then I saw someone online claim that a ball and chain trooper can actually harm them. But this didn't make sense to me. The weapon he uses is made of metal, so it should conduct electricity, right? Now I went into a cave where I could find some sparks and created an echo of the ball and chain trooper to see if it could deal with this foe. And as you can see, this really does work, even though it makes no sense at all. Because as soon as you make a Dark Knight attack the spark, he will be shocked. So yeah, I don't know why this works, but it does. When you walk around the world of Hyrule, you will see all kinds of critters everywhere, like birds and fish. But you can't create echoes of them, and as soon as you come close, they will flee and despawn in seconds. But can you kill them? And before you ask, yes, I have zero shame, and for science I will literally try anything, even digital animal cruelty. So I stacked a bunch of beds, lined up Zelda perfectly, and transformed into Link so I could shoot an arrow at this parrot in the Faron wetlands. But as you can see, the arrow does nothing at all. It passes right through the bird and deals no damage. So yeah, by the looks of it, the critters you see around Hyrule are just there to add some flair. But aside from that, you can't do anything with them. Before the game came out, many people were speculating what would be possible in the game using echoes, and one that I had to test as soon as I got into the game was trampoline stacking. Will you jump higher if you do this? And if you drop a trampoline on another trampoline, will it start to bounce? Well, I had no idea at all, so I decided to experiment with this item. First, I stacked a bunch of trampolines to see if it allowed me to jump higher at all, and as I kind of expected, it doesn't. So I moved on to the next thing. Can a trampoline bounce on another trampoline? Which could be useful for all kinds of things. Well, after trying it, I can say that the answer is no. This isn't possible at all. As soon as you try this, both of them will break on impact. In general, this item is quite fragile. So while it can be useful to get across chasms and obstacles, they can't really break the game. Now this next one is simple, but also quite crucial. Is there actually fall damage in the game? Because in some games it's a thing, while in others it isn't. Well, in order to test this, I went to one of the highest heights I could find and jumped off to see if anything would happen at all. And no, I was completely fine and took no damage. So this is not a thing in the game, which is quite handy actually. One of my favorite enemies in the game is the Crow. Summoning a group of them is super effective, quite fun, and a great way to farm money, which I have done a lot. But after making loads of money off of using them on enemies, I thought to myself, will these money-hungry crows also grab items? Well, I went through the land of Hyrule and killed some enemies in the hopes that they would drop any items. As soon as one did, I summoned a crow to see if it would go for the loot. But each time I did this, the crow didn't care at all. So as far as I can see, the crows just care about money, and everything else is just trash to them. We've tried to turn water into ice, but we failed. So now we will try to do something similar, and maybe we will succeed this time. In the previous game, Tears of the Kingdom, you can cool down lava and turn it into rock, allowing you to use it as a platform. And in this game, you obtain the lava rock echo at some point. But can you also create these yourself without using echoes? I mean, you can summon ice and water blocks, which could be used to turn lava into rock. This could be super handy. So I went to Elden Volcano to see if I could transform the lava found there into anything else. First, I tried to dump water on it, but this evaporated immediately and did nothing at all. So I tried to do the same with ice blocks. But once again, the lava got rid of it right away and absolutely nothing happened. So yeah, this isn't possible sadly enough, which is actually very disappointing. One of the most peaceful places in this version of Hyrule has to be the ranch. All the cute animals as well as the music make it one of my favorites in the entire game, just like the ranches seen in older titles. But as soon as I got my hands on the Firework Echo, which you can obtain from a side quest found in the game, I was curious if it would scare the horses, crows and other animals seen at the ranch. Hylians are often startled when you place this echo and the explosives go off. But what about animals? In real life, almost every pet we have will have a strong reaction to it. So let's see what happens here. I went to the middle of the ranch and placed down a firework. Now as soon as it went off, the Hylians around it were shocked. However, all the animals remained calm. They didn't even flinch, which was very surprising. So yeah, I guess the animals in Hyrule don't really care about this stuff. Now at first I thought that summoning enemies to fight for you would be boring at some point, but surprisingly enough, I was entertained by it throughout the whole game. However, recently I found out that you can use them for more than just fighting, because some folks told me that the crows can be used to fly. All you need to do is hold one and then just jump from a height or get lifted into the air by steam. So I created a crow echo while standing on this tree and jumped down to see what would happen. And as you can see, it does have an effect. Now sure, you won't really fly. Instead, you slowly glide down, which can still be super useful. I mean, in some sections of the game, it can make life much easier, like in and around Elden Volcano. And I bet that some of you even used this trick during that portion of the game. But sadly enough, I only realized this was possible after beating that section. But hey, as you can see, the claim is true. Now those were all the myths we had, but as you all know, these videos always become a million times better as soon as all of you help me. So if you want to be featured in a video, be sure to leave your idea below. And as always, people who donate or become a member are at the top of my list. Aside from that, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe so you won't miss any future videos.